Imagine a village in Europe where there are no streets, no cars, and none of the constant noise of traffic. Instead, small boats glide quietly through narrow canals, passing old houses surrounded by flower gardens and connected by small wooden bridges. It looks like the setting of a fairy tale, but this place is real. This is Giethoorn, a small village in the north of the Netherlands that became famous for a rather unusual detail. In the historic center, water has completely replaced the streets. Here, residents use boats to visit neighbors, go shopping, or simply cross the village. The silence is so striking that many visitors say walking through Giethoorn feels like stepping into a different rhythm of life, far removed from the rush of modern cities. But the most curious part is that this village was never planned to be like this. Centuries ago, an apparently ordinary activity completely transformed the region's landscape and ended up creating the canals that now define Giethoorn. And understanding how that happened helps explain why this small village became one of the most unique places in Europe.
Giethoorn is located in the north of the Netherlands, in the province of Overijssel, about 120 kilometers from Amsterdam. Despite being relatively close to major cities, the village seems to belong to a completely different world. Surrounding it is one of the most well-preserved natural areas in the country, Weerribben National Park, a vast region made up of lakes, marshes, reeds, and natural canals. This unique landscape did not appear by chance. For centuries, the region was known for its wetlands rich in peat, a type of organic material that was widely used as fuel in Europe before coal became popular. To extract this peat, residents began digging the ground in long, narrow strips, removing layers of earth and leaving behind large depressions that slowly filled with water. Over time, these excavations ended up creating a complex network of small lakes and interconnected canals. What began as simple mining areas completely transformed the landscape of the region. Instead of dry fields or traditional roads, waterways emerged that began connecting the houses and small properties scattered throughout the area. It was in this environment, surrounded by water and nature, that Giethoorn began to take shape, and the foundation of what would make the village so different from anywhere else in Europe was starting to form. The story of Giethoorn began around the 13th century when small groups of settlers arrived in this marshy region in search of land to live and work. At that time, much of the territory was difficult to inhabit. The soil was damp, covered with dense vegetation, and cut through by flooded areas. Even so, these families decided to settle there. According to local tradition, the first residents made a curious discovery while exploring the region. Scattered across the land were hundreds of goat horns, likely the remains of animals that had died in a massive flood long before. This discovery eventually gave rise to the village's name. The word Giethoorn comes from an old expression meaning something like goat horns. Over time, the residents began to exploit a valuable resource that existed beneath the region's soil, peat. This material was highly sought after in medieval Europe because it could be dried and used as fuel to heat homes and cook food. To extract it, workers dug the ground in long, narrow strips. These deep excavations removed large amounts of earth. Gradually, the holes left behind began to fill with rainwater and small natural streams. Without realizing it, the residents were creating something that would forever change the village's landscape, a growing network of canals and lakes that would eventually replace the streets themselves.
Over the centuries, the canals created by the excavations became a permanent part of the landscape. The areas of solid ground were separated by narrow stretches of water, and what initially seemed like a simple consequence of mining work ended up defining how the village would be organized. Instead of wide streets or traditional roads, Giethoorn developed around these canals.
Houses were built on small patches of land connected to one another by narrow paths, and above all, by wooden bridges. Today, there are more than 170 small bridges scattered throughout the village, many of them crossing canals that quietly wind between gardens and old houses. In the historic center, cars are practically non-existent. Most of the streets are narrow trails for pedestrians and cyclists, while the canals function as true water avenues. To get from one point of the village to another, many residents simply use boats. These boats are usually small and quiet, often electric, gliding slowly across the water with almost no noise. The result is a surprisingly peaceful environment. Without the constant sound of engines or traffic, Giethoorn has a calm atmosphere that makes many visitors feel as if they are walking through a place where time has slowed down. For someone visiting Giethoorn for the first time, it can be hard to imagine how everyday life works in a place where water replaces the streets. But for the residents, this way of living has been part of their routine for generations. In many homes, the boat is literally parked in front of the garden, like a car sitting in a driveway. It is common to see residents using small boats to visit neighbors, go to the market, or simply cross one of the canals that run through the village. Some use traditional boats, while others prefer modern electric models that make almost no noise as they move across the water. Even deliveries can happen this way. In some cases, food, packages, and materials arrive at houses through the canals, transported by small boats that slowly pass along the banks. For those who live there, the rhythm of life is usually much calmer than in cities. Walking along the narrow paths, tending gardens, or navigating the canals is part of everyday routine. On many mornings, the only sound you hear is the gentle movement of the water or birds singing nearby. This simple and quiet lifestyle is precisely what makes Giethoorn so special, a place where the relationship between people, nature, and water still defines the rhythm of daily life. One of the elements that makes Giethoorn even more charming is its traditional houses. Scattered along the canals, many of them look as if they came straight out of a fairy tale setting. Small, surrounded by carefully maintained gardens, and often reflected in the calm water of the canals, these houses help create the village's unique atmosphere. Many of the oldest buildings feature thatched roofs, a traditional type of roofing that was very common in rural areas of the Netherlands centuries ago. Besides being beautiful, these roofs also served a practical purpose. They helped keep homes warm during the winter and cool during the summer. Around the houses, it's common to see gardens filled with flowers, trees, and small wooden fences. Many residents take great care of these spaces, maintaining the charming appearance that has become one of Giethoorn's trademarks. Although they appear very old, many of these houses have been carefully preserved and adapted over time. Inside, they often offer modern comfort, while the exterior maintains the traditional style that helps preserve the village's historical identity. This combination of traditional architecture, nature, and peaceful canals makes walking through Giethoorn feel like stepping into an almost cinematic setting. For many centuries, Giethoorn remained relatively isolated, known mainly by the people who lived in the region. But this began to change in the 20th century, when the village started attracting attention because of its unusual and highly photogenic landscape. One of the moments that helped bring Giethoorn wider recognition was the release of a Dutch film in the 1950s that had scenes filmed in the village. The images of the canals, bridges, and traditional houses sparked curiosity among many viewers, and slowly, the place began receiving more and more visitors. With the rise of the internet and social media, Giethoorn's fame grew even further. Photos of the village began circulating around the world, showing a place where canals replace streets and small boats glide quietly between gardens and old houses. It didn't take long for Giethoorn to gain a popular nickname among tourists, the Venice of the Netherlands. Today, millions of visitors pass through the village every year. Many arrive to take boat tours along the canals, walk along the paths, or simply admire the peaceful scenery that made Giethoorn so famous. Even with this increase in tourism, much of the village still preserves its original charm, and that is precisely what continues to attract people from all over the world. Although Giethoorn becomes very busy during spring and summer, the village reveals a completely different side once the high season ends. In the colder months, when the number of tourists decreases, the pace of the place becomes even more peaceful. On winter mornings, for example, it is common for a light mist to cover the canals and the fields surrounding the village. Wooden bridges, houses with thatched roofs, and silent gardens seem to slowly emerge through the fog, creating an almost cinematic landscape. During this time, the silence becomes even more noticeable. Without the constant movement of tourist boats, the canals reflect only the trees and houses around them. For many residents, this is when Giethoorn truly reveals its essence. In some winters, when temperatures drop low enough, parts of the canals may even freeze. When this happens, the scene changes completely. Instead of boats moving across the water, some people begin crossing the canals over the ice, often while skating. These moments reveal a lesser-known side of the village, a place that, despite being famous worldwide, can still preserve periods of complete calm. And it is in this silence that many say the true atmosphere of Giethoorn can be felt.
Although it is a relatively small village, Giethoorn has several interesting details that help explain why it became so famous around the world. One of them is the impressive number of bridges. Along the canals that cross the village, there are more than 170 small wooden bridges connecting paths, gardens, and houses scattered along the water's edge. Another interesting detail is the type of boat most commonly used in the area. Many visitors rent small boats known as whisper boats. They get this name because they are powered by extremely quiet electric motors, allowing people to navigate the canals with almost no noise. This helps preserve the peaceful atmosphere of the village. Giethoorn also has a relatively small population. Around 2,500 to 3,000 people live in the area, which means that on some peak season days, the number of tourists can actually exceed the number of residents. Even so, the village has managed to preserve much of its identity. The traditional houses, carefully maintained gardens, and the canals that run through the landscape remain almost the same as they were decades ago. Perhaps it is exactly this combination of history, nature, and simplicity that makes Giethoorn feel so different, almost like a small piece of another time hidden in the heart of the Netherlands.
Giethoorn is one of those places that seems to challenge the logic of the modern world. In an era dominated by highways, cars, and increasingly busy cities, this small Dutch village continues to follow a very different rhythm. Here, canals replace streets, boats replace cars, and silence is as much a part of the landscape as the old houses and wooden bridges. Walking through Giethoorn or slowly navigating its canals feels like stepping into a place where time seems to move at a calmer pace. Perhaps that is why so many people around the world feel drawn to this village, not only because of its beautiful scenery, but because of the sense of tranquility it conveys. And places like this are becoming increasingly rare. If you enjoy discovering unique villages, surprising landscapes, and places that seem to come from another time, keep exploring the world with us. There are still many hidden villages and fascinating stories waiting to be discovered.